Member for Birmingham City Council on Transport and Environment. Waseem.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, apologies for being late. I was speaking at an event upstairs in the council chamber where we've just launched the Green Conversation in partnership with a number of environmental groups in the city. So it's an exciting initiative where they will start to discuss some of the clear challenges we have in this city. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our two young people representing those that were involved in the youth strikes, the youth climate change strikes outside. Those young people who are involved in those strikes are a credit to our city, and we owe it to them and future generations to get it right. We have a serious crisis, not just in our city but in society, which is climate change, and we have to do something about it. In the very near future, this council, I'm sure, will be declaring a climate emergency, but it's not the words in that motion, but the actions that the council takes thereafter, which will be absolutely important. And I would very much welcome not just the involvement of young people, but trade unions and the Trade Council and any other organisation in helping shape council policies to take the urgent action which we require in our city. I've been invited today to talk about the clean air zone and the policies around how we're tackling air pollution in the city. We've agreed what some regard as quite a controversial policy with the introduction of a clean air zone D. It's certainly been an interesting period of time as we've consulted and engaged with our communities right across the city. Back in December 2017, Birmingham City Council received a ministerial direction from the government to get legally compliant when it came to nitrogen oxide within the city in the shortest possible time. That was after a number of successful attempts by Client Earth to take which is an international environmental group, where they successfully took the government to court on a number of occasions for their failure to act with respect to getting good air quality, which is a fundamental human right across our city. So in a way, the government was passing the buck on to us, but we received the ministerial direction, and I'm not going to hide behind the fact that the government are asking us to do this thing. I firmly believe that this is the right thing to move forward. We cannot continue as a city having the high illegal levels of air pollution, which leads to what health professionals tell me up to 900 premature deaths per year. That's 900 too many. Some people have questioned this figure. As far as I'm concerned, one's too many, but we really need to get a grips with it. So last summer we ran a consultation. It was the biggest consultation response Birmingham City Council has ever had. We had, I'll give you the exact figures, 10,368 individuals respond, and 384 organisations and businesses completed the consultation. The vast majority of them were against the introduction of a clean air zone, but some of the other opinions that came forward was people wanted to change the geographical scope of the clean air zone, because we're proposing a clean air zone around the A4540, the middle ring road that runs around the city. It's a natural boundary, but most of the illegal locations are within that particular area. One's just outside of the Dartmouth Circus, but our modelling shows that by the introduction of a clean air zone, that we'll get legally compliant with that particular location too. Some people said make the area smaller, some people said make it a citywide clean air zone, so people had different opinions to that. We also had many people talk about the financial impact on individuals, families and businesses, which are very important. I'll touch upon our response to that. Improvements to public transport and cycle network. Birmingham's public transport is not fit for purpose, and that's largely because we've not made some of the tough decisions around public transport in our city. We have limited control of we have virtually no control of the bus network, whereas London, Sadiq Khan has a regulated bus service. So there's real challenges there, but the Shadow Transport Secretary, Andy McDonald, was here recently, where a Jeremy Corbyn government will definitely give councils greater powers over buses, which is something we desperately need. There was issues around the charging points for electric vehicles in the city. Again, that's not fit for purpose, but the good news on that is we've secured nearly £3 million from government to vastly improve the charging infrastructure within our city. We're currently procuring for a partner, and I've been assured by officers by the 1st of September we'll have the new system will start to get upgraded, so we'll have a new system in place. But we're also doing a piece of work looking at how we can support those that live in terraced houses. 1 in 3 residents like myself live in a terraced house. We don't have drives. How are we going to get electric charging points put in? So there's some work we're looking at, innovative work that other councils have tried, including putting charges on lampposts and also burying charges underneath and then pulling them out. So there's a variety of things we're currently exploring in relation to that. But the key thing that came forward was, whilst we're trying to reverse health inequality with the introduction of a clean air zone, we need to support those that are most vulnerable, and some of the poorest communities, some of the most socially deprived households are within the clean air zone area. And one thing I made absolutely clear to ministers when I met them last June, we'll introduce this clean air zone, but we need sufficient support, because what we know is when people end up losing their jobs and come off the labour market, go back on the dole, their mental and physical well-being is impacted upon. And the last thing we want to do is introduce a policy, i.e. the clean air zone, which is about reversing health inequalities, but ultimately we increase health inequalities because people can't get to work and they end up losing their jobs or businesses suffer. So we've successfully secured £38 million from the government to support our communities through a set of mitigations, and we're also looking at introducing exemptions. During the consultation, Shabana Mahmood, the MP for Birmingham Ladywood, wrote to us, and her first line was, in principle, I support the clean air zone. And the next 3 pages were all about the support that communities that she represents within the area need. And everything within that was justified. So I tasked the officers of the council and said, we've got to pass the Shabana Mahmood test here. And I'd like to think that with the package of mitigation exemptions we've got, we can pass the Shabana Mahmood test. I'm quickly going to run through the exemptions, because they still consider a amount of confusion out there, because we've just had approval for this scheme, so a lot of this information isn't in the public domain. But what we're looking to do is, within the money that we've got, we're going to have a very intense marketing and engagement program within the clean air zone area, which goes beyond social media, because too often social media is the first protocol for officers of the council or any public institution, but we know that many people are digitally excluded and not on social media, so we need to get right into the neighbourhoods with this offer. So I'm just going to run off, Chair, some headlines of what we managed to secure and then open up for questions. So the exemptions, first of all, which are not costing anything, it's just an exemption that we've got agreement from government on. So commercial vehicles that are registered within the clean air zone, so up to 2 vehicles per company will have an exemption of 12 months. Commercial vehicles with pre-existing finance agreements will have a one-year exemption. Those that live in the clean air zone area with private vehicles, so your communities in Nechells, Ladywood, Newtown, some of our poorest communities, they'll have an extra 2 years, so they've got a 2-year exemption that they can take advantage of. Individuals travelling into the CAS area for work, so workers with a non-compliant vehicle. A non-compliant vehicle is not a vehicle which is not Euro 6 diesel or Euro 4 petrol. Euro 6 diesels are largely diesel vehicles manufactured after 2016. Some manufacturers started early, but there's a way of checking that out. And Euro 4 petrol vehicles are petrol vehicles manufactured after 2006. So petrol clearly is the less pollutant of vehicles. So workers with a non-compliant vehicle who work within the clean air zone will be exempt from paying the clean air zone charge as long as you're earning less than £30,000. There's a cap there, so there's a 1-year exemption on that. Visitors to to hospitals within the CAS will have a 1-year exemption too, and those vehicles registered to community schools on section 19 will be entirely exempt. In terms of the mitigations we've agreed, we've managed to secure £10.84 million for mobility support for individuals working within the CAS. So there's up to £2,000 available for a diesel scrappage scheme and £1,000 available towards a Swift card or a bus pass. So those are people who live across the West Midlands but work in the clean air zone area. We've managed to secure £15 million for our taxi community. So in terms of Hackney carriage, there'll be £5,000 towards a retrofit to get to a compliant vehicle, or also towards an electric vehicle, and that's on top of the government grant that they can obtain. We're going to buy 50 electric vehicles electric hackney carriage vehicles or black cabs ultimately, that we're going to hire out at a very reasonable rate to some of our black cab drivers who are coming towards the end of their career. So if you're in your late 50s or early 60s, paying £40,000 after the grant to buy an electric vehicle is very, very difficult. So we would prioritise those particular individuals. There's up to £2,000 support for private hire drivers across the city, in particular though. So that is £2,000 towards a vehicle which goes towards a low emission vehicle, which is beyond what the policy will agree. There's also support for HGV and coach compliant funds, so it's about £10 million. Fleet, there's £15,000 funding package per company for that. So there's a substantial amount of money that we've secured. We're the first clean air zone that's been agreed across the city, across the country. And whilst we asked for a bit extra, I'm actually quite satisfied with what the government's given. It's easy for me to criticise the government to say they've not given us enough, but I think we've got a decent amount of money. The other thing I'll say is the clean air zone is a start of getting legally compliant is a start. We need to get safe levels of air quality right across the city, and what we know is that the clean air zone will get us legally compliant within the city centre, but the further away you go, the impact of the clean air zone will diminish. So what I want to ensure is that we've got clean air in every single neighbourhood, and that's why we're currently consulting on our clean air strategy, which looks at a number of interventions, but we're looking at other things that we can get out of that. We're working very closely with the University of Birmingham, who've just secured some money from government for air quality monitoring right across the region. One of the most popular things that's in the clean air strategy is something called school streets, where we create school exclusion zones outside school, because one of the biggest challenges we've got is parents and guardians, when they're going to drop off and pick up their children, they tend to drive their vehicles there rather than walk to drop off and pick up their children. And we want to work with local schools and the school community to create an environment where people are walking to school, cycling to school, using public transport, other sustainable forms of transport rather than private car. So I've rattled through as much as I could, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thinking, Waseem.